The wheel weaves. The first light of morning already pearled the sky by the time Thom Merrilin found himself trudging back to the bunch of grapes. Even where the halls and taverns lay thickest, there was a brief time when the foregate lay quiet, gathering its breath. In his present mood, Thom would not have noticed if the empty street had been on fire. Some of Barthanes' guests had insisted on keeping him long after most had gone, long after Barthanes had taken himself to bed. It had been his own fault for leaving the great hunt of the Horn, changing to the sort of tales he told and songs he sang in the villages, Mara and the Three Foolish Kings, and how Susa tamed Jane Farstrider, and stories of Anla, the wise counselor. He had meant the choices to be a private comment on their stupidity, never dreaming any of them might listen, much less be intrigued. Intrigued, in a way. They had demanded more of the same, but they had laughed in the wrong places, at the wrong things. They had laughed at him too, apparently thinking he would not notice, or else that a full purse stuffed in his pocket would heal any wounds. He had almost thrown it away twice already. The heavy purse burning his pocket and pride was not the only reason for his mood, nor even the nobles' contempt. They had asked questions about Rand, not even bothering to be subtle with a mere gleeman. Why was Rand in Cairhien? Why had an Andoran lord taken him, a gleeman, aside? Too many questions. He was not sure his answers had been clever enough. His reflexes for the great game were rusty. Before turning toward the bunch of grapes, he had gone to the great tree. It was not difficult to find where someone was staying in Cairhien if you pressed a palm or two with silver. He was still not sure what he had intended to say. Rand was gone with his friends, and the Aes Sedai. It left a feeling of something not done. The boy's on his own now. Burn me. I'm out of it. He strode through the common room, empty as it seldom was, and took the steps 2 at a time. At least he tried to. His right leg did not bend well, and he nearly fell. Muttering to himself, he climbed the rest of the way at a slower pace, and opened the door to his room softly, so as not to wake Dena. Despite himself, he smiled when he saw her lying on the bed with her face turned to the wall, still in her dress. Fell asleep waiting for me. Fool girl. But it was a kindly thought. He was not sure there was anything she would do that he would not forgive or excuse. Deciding on the spur of the moment that tonight was the night he'd let her perform for the first time, he lowered his harp case to the floor and put a hand on her shoulder to wake her and tell her. She rolled limply onto her back, staring up at him, glazed eyes open wide above the gash across her throat. The side of the bed that had been hidden by her body was dark and sodden. Thom's stomach heaved. If his throat had not been so tight he could not breathe, he would have vomited or screamed or both. He had only the creaking of wardrobe doors for warning. He spun, knives coming out of his sleeves and leaving his hands in the same motion. The first blade took the throat of a fat, balding man with a dagger in his hand. The man stumbled back, blood bubbling around his clutching fingers as he tried to cry out. Spinning on his bad leg threw Thom's other blade off, though. The knife stuck in the right shoulder of a heavily muscled man with scars on his face who was climbing out of the other wardrobe. The big man's knife dropped from a hand that suddenly would not do what he wanted, and he lumbered for the door. Before he could take a second step, Thom produced another knife and slashed him across the back of his leg. The big man yelled and stumbled, and Thom seized a handful of greasy hair, slamming his face against the wall beside the door. The man screamed again as the knife hilt sticking out of his shoulder hit the door. Thom thrust the blade in his hand to within an inch of the man's dark eye. The scars on the big man's face gave him a hard look, but he stared at the point without blinking and did not move a muscle. The fat man, lying half in the wardrobe, kicked a last kick and was still. "Before I kill you," Thom said, "tell me, why?" His voice was quiet, numb. He felt numb inside. "The great game," the man said quickly. His accent was of the streets, and his clothes as well, but they were a shade too fine, too unworn. He had more coin to spend than any four-gater should. Nothing against you personal, you see. It is just the game. The game? I'm not mixed up in Dias Diamar. Who would want to kill me for the great game? The man hesitated. Thom moved his blade closer. If the fellow blinked, his eyelashes would brush the point. Who, Barthanes? Came the hoarse answer. Lord Barthanes. We would not have killed you. Barthanes wants information. We just wanted to find out what you know. There can be gold in it for you. A nice, fat, golden crown for what you know. Maybe two. Liar. I was in Barthanes' manor last night, as close to him as I am to you. If he wanted anything of me, I'd never have left alive. I tell you, we have been looking for you, or anyone who knows about this Andorran lord, for days. I never heard your name until last night downstairs. Lord Barthanes is generous. It could be 5 crowns. The man tried to pull his head away from the knife in Thom's hand, and Thom pushed him harder against the wall. What Andorran lord? But he knew the light help him. He knew God of House Althor. Tall, young, a blade master, or at least he wears the sword. I know he came to see you. Him and an Ogier. And you talked. Tell me what you know. I might even throw in a crown or two myself. You fool, Thom breathed. Dena died for this? Oh, light, she's dead. He felt as if he wanted to cry. The boy's a shepherd in a fancy coat, with Aes Sedai around him like bees around honey roses. Just a shepherd. He tightened his grip in the man's hair. Wait, you can make more than any 5 crowns, or even 10, 100 more like. Every house wants to know about this Rand Althor. 2 or 3 have approached me with what you know, and my knowing who wants to know it, we could both fill our pockets. And there has been a woman, a lady, I have seen more than once while asking after him. If we can find out who she is, why, we could sell that too. You've made one real mistake in it all, Thom said. Mistake? The man's far hand was beginning to slide down toward his belt. No doubt he had another dagger there. Thom ignored it. You should never have touched the girl. The man's hand darted for his belt. Then he gave one convulsive start as Thom's knife went home. Thom let him fall over away from the door and stood a moment before bending tiredly to tug his blades free. The door banged open, and he whirled with a snarl on his face. Zira jerked back, a hand to her throat, staring at him. That fool Ella just told me, she said unsteadily, that 2 of Barthanes' men were asking after you last night, and with what I've heard this morning. I thought you said you didn't play in the game anymore. They found me, he said wearily. Her eyes dropped from his face and widened as they took in the bodies of the 2 men. Hastily, she stepped into the room, shutting the door behind her. This is bad, Thom. You'll have to leave Cairhien. Her gaze fell on the bed, and her breath caught. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, Thom, I'm so sorry. I cannot leave yet, Zira. He hesitated, then tenderly drew a blanket over Dena, covering her face. I have another man to kill first. The innkeeper gave herself a shake and pulled her eyes away from the bed. Her voice was more than a little breathy, if you mean Barthanes. Everybody's talking about it already. He is dead. His servants found him this morning, torn to pieces in his bedchamber. The only way they knew it was him was his head stuck on a spike over the fireplace. She laid a hand on his arm. Thom, you can't hide that you were there last night, not from anybody who wants to know. Add these two in, and there's nobody in Cairhien who won't believe you were involved. There was a slight questioning note in her last words, as if she too were wondering. It doesn't matter, I suppose, he said dully. He could not stop looking down at the blanket-covered shape on the bed. Perhaps I will go back to Andor, to Camelin. She took his shoulders, turning him away from the bed. You men, she sighed, always thinking with either your muscles or your hearts, and never your heads. Camelin is as bad as Cairhien. For you, either place, you'll end up dead or in prison. Do you think she'd want that? If you want to honor her memory, stay alive. Will you take care of? Shh, shh. He could not say it. Growing old, he thought, going soft. He pulled the heavy purse from his pocket and folded her hands around it. This should take care of. Shh, shh. Everything. And help when they start asking questions about me too. I will see to everything, she said gently. You must go, Thom. Now. He nodded reluctantly and slowly began stuffing a few things in a set of saddlebags. While he worked, Zira got her first close look at the fat man sprawled partway in the wardrobe, and she gave a loud gasp. He looked at her inquiringly. As long as he had known her, she had never been one to go faint over blood. These aren't Barthanes' men, Thom. At least, that one isn't. She nodded toward the fat man. It's the worst-kept secret in Cairhien that he works for House Rietan. For Galldrian. Galldrian, he said flatly. What has that bloody shepherd gotten me into? What have the Aes Sedai gotten us both into? But it was Galldrian's men murdered her. There must have been something of his thoughts on his face. Zira said sharply, Dena wants you alive, you fool. You try to kill the king and you'll be dead before you get within 100 spans of him if you come that close. A roar came from the city walls, as if half of Cairhien were shouting. Frowning, Thom peered from his window. Beyond the top of the gray walls above the rooftops of the foregate, a thick column of smoke was rising into the sky, far beyond the walls. Beside the first black pillar, a few gray tendrils quickly grew into another, and more wisps appeared further on. He estimated the distance and took a deep breath. Perhaps you had better think about leaving too. It looks as if someone is firing the granaries. I have lived through riots before. Go now, Thom. With a last look at Dena's shrouded form, he gathered his things, but as he started to leave, Zira spoke again. You have a dangerous look in your eyes, Thom Merrilin. Imagine Dena sitting here, alive and hale. Think what she would say. Would she let you go off and get yourself killed to no purpose? I'm only an old gleeman, he said from the door, and Randall Thor is only a shepherd, but we both do what we must. Who could I possibly be dangerous to? As he pulled the door to, hiding her, hiding Dena, a mirthless, wolfish grin came onto his face. His leg hurt, but he barely felt it as he hurried purposefully down the stairs and out of the inn. Padan Fain reined in his horse atop a hill above Falme, in one of the few sparse thickets remaining on the hills outside the town. The pack horse bearing his precious burden bumped his leg, and he kicked it in the ribs without looking. The animal snorted and jerked back to the end of the lead he had tied to his saddle. The woman had not wanted to give up her horse, no more than any of the Dart friends who had followed him had wanted to be left alone in the hills with the Trollocs, without Fain's protecting presence. He had solved both problems easily. Meat in a Trolloc cookpot had no need of a horse. The woman's companions had been shaken by the journey along the ways, to a Waygate outside a long-abandoned steading on Toman Head, and watching the Trollocs prepare their dinner had made the surviving Dark friends extremely biddable. From the edge of the trees, Fain studied the unwalled town and sneered. One short merchant train was rumbling in among the stables and horse lots and wagon yards that bordered the town, while another rumbled out, raising little dust from dirt packed by many years of such traffic. The men driving the wagons and the few riding beside them were all local men by their clothing, yet the mounted men, at least, had swords on baldricks, and even a few spears and bows. The soldiers he saw, and there were few, did not seem to be watching the armed men they had supposedly conquered. He had learned something of these people, these Seanchan, in his day and a night on Toman Head. At least, as much as the defeated folk knew. It was never hard to find someone alone, and they always answered questions properly put. Men gathered more information on the invaders, as if they actually believed they would eventually do something with what they knew, but they sometimes tried to hold back. Women, by and large, seemed interested in going on with their lives whoever their rulers were. Yet they noted details men did not, and they talked more quickly once they stopped screaming. Children talked the quickest of all, but they seldom said much that was worthwhile. He had discarded 3/4 of what he had heard as nonsense and rumors growing into fables, but he took some of those conclusions back. Now, anyone at all could enter Falme, it appeared. With a start, he saw the truth of a little more nonsense as 20 soldiers rode out of the town. He could not make out their mounts clearly, but they were certainly not horses. They ran with a fluid grace, and their dark skins seemed to have a glint in the morning sun, as of scales. He craned his neck to watch them disappear inland, then booted his horse toward the town. The local folk among the stables and parked wagons and fenced horse lots gave him no more than a glance or two. He had no interest in them either. He rode on into the town, onto its cobblestone streets, sloping down to the harbor. He could see the harbor clearly, and the large, oddly shaped Seanchan ships anchored there. No one bothered him as he searched streets that were neither crowded nor empty. There were more Seanchan soldiers here. The people hurried about their business with eyes down, bowing whenever soldiers passed, but the Seanchan paid them no mind. It all seemed peaceful on the surface, despite the armored Seanchan in the streets and the ships in the harbor, but Fain could sense the tension underneath. He always did well where men were tense and afraid. He came to a large house with more than a dozen soldiers standing guard before it. Fain stopped and dismounted. Except for one obvious officer, most wore armor of unrelieved black, and their helmets made him think of locusts' heads. 2 leathery-skinned beasts with 3 eyes and horny beaks instead of mouths flanked the front door, squatting like crouching frogs. The soldier standing by each of the creatures had 3 eyes painted on the breast of his armor. Fain eyed the blue-bordered banner flapping above the roof, the spread-winged hawk clutching lightning bolts, and chortled inside himself. Women went in and out of a house across the street, women linked by silver leashes, but he ignored them. He knew about Damane from the villagers. They might be of some use later, but not now. The soldiers were looking at him, especially the officer, whose armor was all gold and red and green, forcing an ingratiating smile onto his face. Fain made himself bow deeply. "My lords, I have something here that will interest your great lord. I assure you, he will want to see it, and me personally." He gestured to the squarish shape on his pack horse, still wrapped in the huge, striped blanket in which his people had found it. The officer stared him up and down. "You sound a foreigner to this land. Have you taken the oaths?" "I obey, await, and will serve," Fain replied smoothly. Everyone he had questioned spoke of the oaths, though none had understood what they meant. If these people wanted oaths, he was prepared to swear anything. He had long since lost count of the oaths he had taken. The officer motioned 2 of his men to see what was under the blanket. Surprised grunts at the weight as they lifted it down from the pack saddle turned to gasps when they stripped the blanket away. The officer stared with no expression on his face at the silver-worked golden chest resting on the cobblestones, then looked at Fain, a gift fit for the Empress herself. "You will come with me." One of the soldiers searched Fain roughly, but he endured it in silence, noting that the officer and the 2 soldiers who took up the chest surrendered their swords and daggers before going inside. Anything he could learn of these people, however small, might help, though he was confident of his plan already. He was always confident, but never more than where lords feared an assassin's knife from their own followers. As they went through the door, the officer frowned at him, and for a moment Fain wondered why. Of course, the beasts. Whatever they were certainly no worse than Trollocs. Nothing at all beside a murdrawl, and he had not given them a second look. It was too late to pretend to be afraid of them now, but the Seanchan said nothing, only led him deeper into the house. And so Fain found himself on his face, in a room bare of furnishings, except for folding screens that hid its walls, while the officer told the High Lord Turak of him and his offering. Servants brought a table on which to set the chest so the High Lord would have no need to stoop. All Fain saw of them were scurrying slippers. He bided his time impatiently. Eventually, there would come a time when he was not the one to bow. Then the soldiers were dismissed, and Fain told to rise. He did so slowly, studying both the High Lord, with his shaven head and his long fingernails and his blue silk robe brocaded with blossoms, and the man who stood beside him with the unshaven half of his pale hair in a long braid. Fain was sure the fellow in green was only a servant, however great, but servants could be useful, especially if they stood high in their master's sight. A marvelous gift. Turak's eyes lifted from the chest to Fain. A scent of roses wafted from the High Lord, yet the question asks itself, how did one like you come by a chest many lesser lords could not afford? Are you a thief? Fain tugged at his worn, none too clean coat. It is sometimes necessary for a man to appear less than he is, High Lord. My present shabbiness allowed me to bring this to you, unmolested. This chest is old, High Lord, as old as the age of legends, and within it lies a treasure such as few eyes have ever seen. Soon, very soon, High Lord, I will be able to open it and give you that which will enable you to take this land as far as you wish, to the spine of the world, the Aiel waste, the lands beyond. Nothing will stand against you, High Lord, once I... He cut off as Turak began running his long-nailed fingers over the chest. I have seen chests such as this, chests from the age of legends, the High Lord said, though none so fine. They are meant to be opened only by those who know the pattern. But He pressed among the ornate whorls and bosses. There was a sharp click, and he lifted back the lid. A flicker of what might have been disappointment passed across his face. Bane bit the inside of his mouth till blood came to keep from snarling. It lessened his bargaining position that he was not the one who had opened the chest. Still, all the rest could go as he had planned, if he could only make himself be patient. But he had been patient so long. These are treasures from the age of legends, Turak said, lifting out the curled horn in one hand and the curved dagger with the ruby and its golden hilt in the other. Fain clutched his hands and fists at his sides so he would not grab the dagger. The age of legends, Turak repeated softly, tracing the silver script inlaid around the golden bell of the horn with the tip of the dagger's blade. His brows rose in startlement, the first open expression Fain had seen from him, but in the next instant Turak's face was as smooth as ever. Do you have any idea what this is? The Horn of Valere, High Lord, Fain said smoothly. pleased to see the mouth of the man with the braid drop open. Turak only nodded as if to himself. The High Lord turned away. Fain blinked and opened his mouth. Then, at a sharp gesture from the yellow-haired man, followed without speaking. It was another room with all the original furnishings gone, replaced by folding screens and a single chair facing a tall round cabinet. Still holding the horn and the dagger, Turak looked at the cabinet, then away. He said nothing, but the other Seanchan snapped quick orders, and in moments men in plain woolen robes appeared through a door behind the screens bearing another small table. A young woman with hair so pale it was almost white came behind them, her arms full of small stands of polished wood in various sizes and shapes. Her garment was white silk, and so thin that Fain could see her body clearly through it, but he had eyes only for the dagger. The horn was a means to an end, but the dagger was a part of him. Turak briefly touched one of the wooden stands the girl held, and she placed it on the center of the table. The men turned the chair to face it under the direction of the man with the braid. The lowest servants' hair hung to their shoulders. They scurried out with bows that almost put their heads on their knees, placing the horn on the stand so that it stood upright. Turak laid the dagger on the table in front of it and went to sit in the chair. Fain could stand it no longer. He reached for the dagger. The yellow-haired man caught his wrist in a crushing grip. Unshaven dog, know that the hand that touches the property of the High Lord unbidden is cut off. It is mine, Fain growled. Patience. So long. Turak, lounging back in the chair, lifted one blue lacquered fingernail, and Fain was pulled out of the way so the High Lord could view the horn unobstructed. Yours, Turak said, inside a chest you could not open. If you interest me sufficiently, I may give you the dagger. Even if it is from the Age of Legends, I have no interest in such as that. Before all else, you will answer me a question. Why have you brought the Horn of Valere to me? Fain eyed the dagger longingly a moment more, then jerked his wrist free and rubbed it as he bowed. That you may sound it, High Lord. Then you may take all of this land if you wish. All of the world. You may break the White Tower and grind the Aes Sedai to dust, for even their powers cannot stop. Heroes come back from the dead. I am to sound it. Turak's tone was flat, and break the White Tower. Again, why? You claim to obey, await, and serve, but this is a land of oath breakers. Why do you give your land to me? Do you have some private quarrel with these women? Fain tried to make his voice convincing, patient, like a worm boring from within. High Lord, my family has passed down a tradition, generation upon generation. We served the High King, Artur Pendrag Tanriel, and when he was murdered by the witches of Tar Valon, we did not abandon our oaths. When others warred and tore apart what Artur Hawkwing had made, we held to our swearing and suffered for it, but held to it still. This is our tradition, High Lord, handed father to son and mother to daughter, down all the years since the High King was murdered, that we await the return of the armies Artur Hawkwing sent across the Arith Ocean, that we await the return of Artur Hawkwing's blood to destroy the White Tower and take back what was the High King's. And when the Hawkwing's blood returns, we will serve and advise as we did for the High King. High Lord, except for its border, the banner that flies over this roof is the banner of Luthair, the son Artur Pendrag Tanreal sent with his armies across the ocean. Fain dropped to his knees, giving a good imitation of being overwhelmed. High Lord, I wish only to serve and advise the blood of the High King. Turak was silent so long that Fain began to wonder if he needed further convincing. He was ready with more, as much as was required. Finally, though, the High Lord spoke. You seem to know what none, neither the high nor the low, has spoken since sighting this land. The people here speak it as one rumor among 10, but you know, I can see it in your eyes, hear it in your voice. I could almost think you were sent to entangle me in a trap. But who, possessing the Horn of Valere, would use it so? None of those of the blood who came with the Haleen could have had the horn, for the legend says it was hidden in this land, and surely any lord of this land would use it against me rather than put it in my hands. How did you come to possess the Horn of Valere? Do you claim to be a hero, as in the legend? Have you done valorous deeds? I am no hero, High Lord. Fain ventured a self-deprecating smile, but Turak's face did not alter, and he let it go. The horn was found by an ancestor of mine during the turmoil after the High King's death. He knew how to open the chest, but that secret died with him in the War of the 100 Years that rent Artur Hawkwing's empire, so that all we who followed him knew was that the horn lay within, and we must keep it safe until the High King's blood returned. Almost could I believe you. Once you sound the horn, do not ruin what convincing you have managed to do. I shall not sound the Horn of Valere. When I return to Seanchan, I shall present it to the Empress as the chiefest of my trophies. Perhaps the Empress will sound it herself. But, High Lord, Fain protested, you must. He found himself lying on his side, his head ringing. Only when his eyes cleared did he see the man with the pale braid rubbing his knuckles and realize what had happened. Some words, the fellow said softly, are never used to the High Lord. Fain decided how the man was going to die. Turak looked from Fain to the horn as placidly as if he had seen nothing. Perhaps I will give you to the Empress, along with the Horn of Valere. She might find you amusing. A man who claims his family held true where all others broke their oaths or forgot them. Fain hid his sudden elation in the act of climbing back to his feet. He had not even known of the existence of an empress until Turak mentioned her, but access to a ruler again. That opened new paths, new plans, access to a ruler with the might of the Seanchan beneath her and the Horn of Valere in her hands. Much better than making this Turak a great king. He could wait for some parts of his plan. Softly, mustn't let him know how much you want it. After so long, a little more patience will not hurt, as the High Lord wishes, he said, trying to sound like a man who only wanted to serve. You seem almost eager, Turak said, and Fain barely suppressed a wince. I will tell you why I will not sound the Horn of Valere, or even keep it, and perhaps that will cure your eagerness. I do not wish a gift of mine to offend the Empress by his actions. If your eagerness cannot be cured, it will never be satisfied, for you will never leave these shores. Do you know that whoever blows the Horn of Valere is linked to it thereafter, that so long as he or she lives, it is no more than a horn to any other? He did not sound as if he expected answers, and in any case, he did not pause for them. I stand 12th in line of succession to the Crystal Throne. If I kept the Horn of Valere, all between myself and the throne would think I meant to be first hereafter, and while the Empress, of course, wishes that we contend with one another, so that the strongest and most cunning will follow her. She currently favors her second daughter, and she would not look well on any threat to Tuan. If I sounded it, even if I then laid this land at her feet, and every woman in the White Tower leashed, the Empress, may she live forever, would surely believe I meant to be more than merely her heir. Fain stopped himself short of suggesting how possible that would be with the aid of the horn. Something in the High Lord's voice suggested, as hard as Fain found it to believe, that he actually meant his wish for her to live forever. I must be patient, a worm in the root. The Empress's listeners may be anywhere, Turak continued. They may be anyone. Juan was born and raised in the house of Aladan, and his family for 11 generations before him. yet even he could be a listener. The man with the braid half made a protesting gesture before jerking himself back to stillness. Even a High Lord or a High Lady can find their deepest secrets known to listeners, can wake to find themselves already handed over to the seekers for truth. Truth is always difficult to find, but the seekers spare no pain in their search, and they will search as long as they think there is need. They make great efforts not to allow a High Lord or High Lady to die in their care, of course, for no man's hand may slay one in whose veins flows the blood of Artur Hawkwing. If the Empress must order such a death, the unfortunate one is placed alive in a silken bag, and that bag hung over the side of the Tower of the Ravens and left there until it rots away. No such care would be taken for one such as you. At the Court of the Nine Moons in Ciandar, one such as you could be given to the Seekers for a shift of your eye, for a misspoken word, for a whim. Are you still eager? Fain managed to tremble in his knees. I wish only to serve and advise, High Lord. I know much that may be useful. This court of Ciandar sounded a place where his plans and skills would find fertile soil. Until I sail back to Seanchan, you will amuse me with your tales of your family and its tradition. It is a relief to find a second man in this light-forsaken land who can amuse me, even if you both tell lies, as I suspect. You may leave me. No other word was spoken, but the girl with the nearly white hair and the almost transparent robe appeared on quick feet to kneel with downcast head beside the High Lord, offering a single steaming cup on a lacquered tray. High Lord, Fain said. The man with the braid, Juan, took hold of his arm, but he pulled loose. Juan's mouth tightened angrily as Fain made his deepest bow yet. I will kill him slowly, yes, High Lord. There are those who follow me. They mean to take the Horn of Valere. Dark friends and worse, High Lord, and they cannot be more than a day or two behind me. Turak took a sip of black liquid from the thin cup balanced on long-nailed fingertips. Few dark friends remain in Seanchan. Those who survive the seekers for truth meet the axe of the headsman. It might be amusing to meet a dark friend. High Lord, they are dangerous. They have Trollocs with them. They are led by one who calls himself Rand Thor, a young man, but vile in the shadow beyond belief, with a lying, devious tongue. In many places he has claimed to be many things, but always the Trollocs come when he is there. High Lord, always the Trollocs come, and kill. Trollocs, Turak mused. There were no Trollocs in Seanchan, but the armies of the night had other allies. Other things. I have often wondered if a groan could kill a Trolloc. I will have watch kept for your Trollocs and your dark friends, if they are not another lie. This land wearies me with boredom. He sighed and inhaled the fumes from his cup. Fain let the grimacing Juan pull him out of the room, hardly even listening to the snarled lecture on what would happen if he ever again failed to leave Lord Turak's presence when given permission to do so. He barely noticed when he was pushed into the street with a coin and instructions to return on the morrow. Randolph Thor was his now. I will see him dead at last, and then the world will pay for what was done to me. Giggling under his breath, he led his horses down into the town in search of an inn. Stedding Tsofu. The river hills on which the city of Cairhien stood gave way to flatter lands and forests. When Rand and the others had ridden half a day, the Shienarans still with their armor on the pack horses. There were no roads where they went, only a scattering of cart tracks, and few farms or villages. Varen pressed for speed, and Ingtar grumbling constantly that they were letting themselves be tricked, that Fain would never have told them where he was really going, yet grumbling at the same time about riding in the opposite direction from Toman Head, as if part of him believed in Toman Head were not months away except by the way they took. Ingtar obliged her. The gray owl banner flew on the wind of their passage. Rand rode with grim determination, avoiding conversation with Varen. He had this thing to do, this duty Ingtar would have called it, and then he could be free of Aes Sedai once and for all. Cairhien seemed to share something of his mood, staring straight ahead at nothing as they rode. When they finally stopped for the night at the edge of a forest, with full dark almost on them, Padan asked Loial questions about the stedding. Trollocs would not enter a stedding. Would wolves? Loial replied shortly that it was only creatures of the shadow that were reluctant to enter stedding. And Aes Sedai, of course, since they could not touch the true source inside a stedding or channel the one power. The Ogier himself appeared the most reluctant of all to go to Stedding Tsofu. Matt was the only one who seemed eager, almost desperately so. His skin looked as if he had not seen the sun in a year, and his cheeks had begun to go hollow, though he said he felt ready to run a foot race. Varen put her hands on him for healing before he rolled into his blankets, and again before they mounted their horses in the morning, but it made no difference in how he looked. Even Euron frowned when he looked at Matt. The sun stood high on the second day when Varen suddenly sat up straight in her saddle and looked around. Beside her, Ingtar gave a start. The undergrowth was not too thick. They had found an easy way under the canopy of oak and hickory, black gum and beech, pierced here and there by a tall pine or leather leaf, or the white slash of a paper bark. But as he followed them, he suddenly felt a chill pass through him, as though he had leaped into a waterwood pond in winter. It flashed through him and was gone, leaving behind a feeling of refreshment, and there was a dull and distant sense of loss, too, though he could not imagine of what. Every rider, as he reached that point, gave a jerk or made some exclamation. Huron's mouth dropped open, and Uno whispered, "Bloody, flaming, shh, shh." Then he shook his head, as if he could not think of anything else to say. There was a look of recognition in Perrin's yellow eyes. Loial took a deep, slow breath and let it out. "It feels, good, to be back in a stedding." Frowning, Rand looked around. He had expected a stedding to be somehow different, but except for that one chill, the forest was the same as what they had been riding through all day. There was the sudden sense of being rested, of course. Then, an Ogier stepped out from behind an oak. She was shorter than Loial, which meant she stood head and shoulders taller than Rand, but with the same broad nose and big eyes, the same wide mouth and tufted ears. Her eyebrows were not so long as Loial's, though, and her features seemed delicate beside his, the tufts on her ears finer. She wore a long green dress, and a green cloak embroidered with flowers, and carried a bunch of silver bell blossoms as if she had been gathering them. She looked at them calmly, waiting. Loial scrambled down from his tall horse and bowed hastily. Rand and the others did the same, if not so quickly as Loial. Even Varen inclined her head. Loial gave their names formally, but he did not mention the name of his stedding. For a moment, the Ogier girl Rand was sure she was no older than Loial, studied them, then smiled. "Be welcome to Stedding Tsofu." Her voice was a lighter version of Loial's too, the softer rumble of a smaller bumblebee. "I am Aerith, daughter of Iva, daughter of Iva, daughter of Allar. Be welcome. We have had so few human visitors since the stonemasons left Cairhien, and now so many at once. Why, we even had some of the traveling people, though, of course, they left when the Oh, I talk too much. I will take you to the elders, only. She searched among them for the one in charge, and settled finally on Varen. "Aes Sedai, you have so many men with you, and armed. Could you please leave some of them outside? Forgive me, but it is always unsettling to have very many armed humans in the stedding at once." "Of course, Aerith," Varen said. "Ingtar, will you see to it?" Ingtar gave orders to Uno, and so it was that he and Huron were the only Shienarans to follow Aerith deeper into the stedding. Leading his horse like the others, Rand looked up as Loial came closer, with many glances at Aerith up ahead with Varen and Ingtar. Huron walked midway between, staring around in amazement, though Rand was not sure at what exactly. Loial bent to speak quietly. "Is she not beautiful, Rand?" And her voice sings. Matt snickered, but when Loial looked at him questioningly, he said, "Very pretty, Loial. A little tall for my taste, you understand, but very pretty, I'm sure." Loial frowned uncertainly, but nodded. "Yes, she is." His expression lightened. "It does feel good to be back in a steading. Not that the longing was taking me, you understand." "The longing," Perrin said. "I do not understand, Loial. We Ogier are bound to the steading, Perrin. It is said that before the breaking of the world we could go where we wished for as long as we wished, like you humans, but that changed with the breaking. Ogier were scattered like every other people, and they could not find any of the steading again. Everything was moved, everything changed. Mountains, rivers, even the seas." "Everybody knows about the breaking," Matt said impatiently. "What does it have to do with this longing?" "It was during the exile, while we wandered lost, that the longing first came on us. The desire to know the steading once more, to know our homes again. Many died of it." Loial shook his head sadly. "More died than lived. When we finally began to find the steading again, one at a time, in the years of the Covenant of the 10 Nations, it seemed we had defeated the longing at last, but it had changed us, put seeds in us. Now, if an Ogier is outside too long, the longing comes again. He begins to weaken, and he dies if he does not return." "Do you need to stay here a while?" Rand asked anxiously. "There's no need to kill yourself to go with us. I will know it when it comes." Loial laughed. "It will be long before it is strong enough to cause harm to me. Why, Delar spent 10 years among the sea folk without ever seeing a steading, and she came safely home." An Ogier woman appeared out of the trees, pausing a moment to speak with Aerith and Varen. She looked Ingtar up and down and seemed to dismiss him, which made him blink. Her eyes swept across Loial, flicked over Urin and the Emmons fielders, before she went off into the forest again. Loial seemed to be trying to hide behind his horse. "Besides," he said, peering cautiously across his saddle after her, "it is a dull life in the steading compared to traveling with 3 Ta'veren." "If you were going to start that again," Matt muttered, and Loial spoke up quickly. "3 friends, then. You are my friends, I hope." "I am," Rand said simply, and Perrin nodded. Matt laughed. "How could I not be friends with somebody who dices so badly?" He threw up his hands when Rand and Perrin looked at him. "Oh, all right. I like you, Loial. You're my friend. Just don't go on about sometimes you're as bad to be around as Rand." His voice sank to a mutter. "At least we're safe here in the steading." Rand grimaced. He knew what Matt meant, here in the steading, where I can't channel. Perrin punched Matt's shoulder, but looked sorry that he had when Matt grimaced at him with that gaunt face. It was the music Rand became aware of first, unseen flutes and fiddles in a jolly tune that floated through the trees, and deep voices singing and laughing. Clear the field, smooth it low, let no weed or stubble stand. Here we labor, here we toil, here the towering trees will grow. Almost at the same moment he realized that the huge shape he was seeing through the trees was itself a tree, with a ridged, buttressed trunk that must have been 20 paces thick. Gaping, he followed it up with his eyes, up through the forest canopy, to branches spreading like the top of a gigantic mushroom, a good 100 paces above the ground. And beyond it were taller still. "Burn me," Matt breathed. You could build 10 houses from just one of those. 50 houses. Cut down a great tree? Loial sounded scandalized and more than a little angry. His ears were stiff and still, his long eyebrows down on his cheeks. We never cut down one of the great trees, not unless it dies, and they almost never do. Few survived the breaking, but some of the largest were seedlings during the Age of Legends. I'm sorry, Matt said. I was just saying how big they are. I won't hurt your trees. Loial nodded, seeming mollified. More. Ogier appeared now, walking among the trees. Most seemed intent on whatever they were about, though all looked at the newcomers, and even gave a friendly nod or a small bow. None stopped or spoke. They had a curious way of moving, in some manner blending a careful deliberateness with an almost childlike carefree joyfulness. They knew and liked who and what they were and where they were, and they seemed at peace with themselves and everything around them. Rand found himself envying them. Few of the Ogier men were any taller than Loial, but it was easy to pick out the older men, one and all. They wore mustaches as long as their dangling eyebrows and narrow beards under their chins. All of the younger were smooth-shaven, like Loial. Many of the men were in their shirt sleeves and carried shovels and mattocks or saws and buckets of pitch. The others wore plain coats that buttoned to the neck and flared about their knees like kilts. The women seemed to favor embroidered flowers, and many wore flowers in their hair too. The embroidery was limited to the cloaks of the younger women. The older women's dresses were embroidered as well, and some women with gray hair had flowers and vines from neck to hem. A handful of the Ogier, women and girls for the most part, did seem to take special notice of Loial. He walked staring straight ahead, ears twitching more wildly the further they went. Rand was startled to see an Ogier apparently walking up out of the ground, out of one of the grassy, wildflower-covered mounds that lay scattered all among the trees here. Then he saw windows in the mounds, and an Ogier woman standing at one, apparently rolling a pie crust, and realized he was looking at Ogier houses. The window frames were stone, but they not only seemed natural formations, they appeared to have been sculpted by wind and water over generations. The great trees, with their massive trunks and spreading roots as thick as horses, needed a great deal of room between them, but several grew right in the town. Dirt ramps took the paths over the roots. In fact, aside from the pathways, the only way to tell town from forest at a glance was a large open space in the center of the town, around what could only be the stump of one of the great trees. Nearly 100 paces across, its surface was polished as smooth as any floor, and there were steps built up to it at several places. Rand was imagining how tall that tree had been when Aerith spoke loudly enough for them all to hear. Here come our other guests. 3 human women came walking around the side of the huge stump. The youngest was carrying a wooden bowl. Aiel, Ingtar said. Maidens of the Spear. Maidens of the Spear. As well, I did leave Masema with the others. Yet he stepped away from Varen and Aerith and reached over his shoulder to loosen his sword in its scabbard. Rand studied the Aiel with an uneasy curiosity. They were what too many people had tried to tell him he was. 2 of the women were mature, the other little more than a girl, but all 3 were tall for women. Their short-cut hair ranged from a reddish-brown to almost golden, with a narrow, shoulder-length tail left long at the back. They wore loose breeches tucked into soft boots, and all their clothes were some shade of brown or gray or green. He thought the garments would fade into rock or woods, almost as well as a warder's cloak. Short bows poked over their shoulders. Quivers and long knives hung at their belts, and each carried a small round shield of hide and a cluster of spears with short shafts and long points. Even the youngest moved with a grace that suggested she knew how to use the weapon she carried. Abruptly, the women became aware of the other humans. They seemed as startled at being startled as they did at the sight of Rand and the others, but they moved like lightning. The youngest one shouted, "Shinarans!" and turned to set the bowl carefully behind her. The other two quickly lifted brown cloths from around their shoulders, wrapping them around their heads instead. The older women were raising black veils across their faces, hiding everything but their eyes, and the youngest straightened to imitate them. Crouching low, they advanced at a deliberate pace, shields held forward with their clusters of spears, except for the one each woman held ready in her other hand. Ingtar's sword came out of its sheath. "Stand clear, Aes Sedai." "Aerith, stand clear." Huron snatched out his swordbreaker, wavered between cudgel and sword for his other hand. After another glance at the Aiel's spears, he chose the sword. "You must not," the Ogier girl protested, wringing her hands. She turned from Ingtar to the Aiel and back. "You must not." Rand realized the heron-marked blade was in his hands. Perrin had his axe half out of the loop at his belt and was hesitating, shaking his head. "Are you too crazy?" Matt demanded. His bow still slanted across his back. "I don't care if they are Aiel. They're women." "Stop this," Vereen demanded. "Stop this immediately." The Aiel never broke stride, and the Aes Sedai clenched her fists in frustration. Matt moved back to put a foot in his stirrup. "I'm leaving," he announced. "You hear me? I'm not staying to let them stick those things in me, and I am not going to shoot a woman." "The Pact," Loial was shouting. "Remember the Pact." It had no more effect than the continued pleas from Varen and Aerith. Rand noticed that both the Aes Sedai and the Ogier girl were keeping well out of the Aiel's way. He wondered if Matt had the right idea. He was not sure he could hurt a woman even if she was trying to kill him. What decided him was the thought that even if he did manage to reach Red Saddle, the Aiel were now no more than 30 paces away. He suspected those short spears could be thrown that far. As the women came closer, still crouching, spears ready, he stopped worrying about not hurting them and began worrying about how to stop them from hurting him. Nervously, he sought the void, and it came, and the distant thought floated outside it that it was only the void. The glow of Set-In was not there. The emptiness was more empty than he ever remembered, vaster, like a hunger great enough to consume him, a hunger for more. There was supposed to be something more. Abruptly, an Ogier strode in between the two groups, his narrow beard quivering. "What is the meaning of this? Put up your weapons." He sounded scandalized. "For you." His glare took in Ingtar and Huron, Rand and Perrin, and did not spare Matt for all his empty hands. "There is some excuse, but for you." He rounded on the Aiel women who had stopped their advance. "Have you forgotten the Pact?" The women uncovered their heads and faces so hastily that it seemed they were trying to pretend they had never been covered. The girl's face was bright red, and the other women looked abashed. One of the older women, the one with the reddish hair, said, "Forgive us, Tree Brother. We remember the Pact, and we would not have bared steel. But we are in the land of the Tree Killers, where every hand is against us, and we saw armed men." Her eyes were gray, Rand saw, like his own. "You are in a steading, Ryan," the Ogier said gently. "Everyone is safe in the steading, little sister. There is no fighting here, and no hand raised against another." She nodded, ashamed, and the Ogier looked at Ingtar and the others. Ingtar sheathed his sword, and Rand did the same, though not so quickly as Huron, who looked almost as embarrassed as the Aiel. Perrin had never gotten his axe all the way out. As he took hand from hilt, Rand let the void go too and shivered. The void went, but it left behind a slowly fading echo of the emptiness all through him, and a desire for something to fill it. The Ogier turned to Varen and bowed. "Aes Sedai, I am Juin, son of Lassel, son of Laud. I have come to take you to the Elders." They would know why an Aes Sedai comes among us, with armed men and one of our own youths. Loial hunched his shoulders as if trying to disappear. Merrilin gave the Aiel a regretful look, as if she wanted to talk with them, then motioned Dwayne to lead, and he took her away without another word or even the first look at Loial. For a few moments, Rand and the others stood facing the three Aiel women uneasily. At least, Rand knew he was uneasy. Ingtar seemed steady as a stone with no more expression than one. The Aiel might have unveiled their faces, but they still had spears in their hands, and they studied the four men as though trying to see inside them. Rand in particular received increasingly angry looks. He heard the youngest woman mutter, "He is wearing a sword," in tones of mingled horror and contempt. Then the three were leaving, stopping to retrieve the wooden bowl and looking over their shoulders at Rand and the others until they vanished among the trees. Maidens of the spear. Ingtar muttered, "I never thought they'd stop once they veiled their faces. Certainly not for a few words." He looked at Rand and his two friends. You should see a charge by red shields or stone dogs, as easy to stop as an avalanche. They would not break the pact once it was recalled to them, Eris said, smiling. They came for sung wood. A note of pride entered her voice. We have 2 tree singers in Stedding Tsofu. They are rare now. I have heard that Stedding Shangtai has a young tree singer who is very talented, but we have 2. Loial blushed, but she did not appear to notice. If you will come with me, I will show you where you may wait until the elders have spoken. As they followed her, Perrin murmured, Sungwood, my left foot. Those Aiel are searching for he who comes with the dawn. And Matt added dryly, they're looking for you, Rand. For me, that is crazy. What makes you think? He cut off as Aerith showed them down the steps of a wildflower-covered house apparently set aside for human guests. The rooms were 20 paces from stone wall to stone wall, with painted ceilings a good 2 spans above the floor, but the Ogier had done their best making something that would be comfortable for humans. Even so, the furniture was a little too large for comfort, the chairs tall enough to lift a man's heels off the floor, the table higher than Rand's waist. Huron, at least, could have walked erect into the stone fireplace, which seemed to have been worn by water rather than made by hands. Aerith eyed Loial doubtfully, but he waved away her concern and pulled one of the chairs into the corner least easily seen from the door. As soon as the Ogier girl left, Rand got Matt and Perrin over to one side. What do you mean they're looking for me? Why? For what reason? They looked right at me and went away. They looked at you, Matt said with a grin, like you hadn't bathed in a month and had doused yourself with sheep dip besides. His grin faded, but they could be looking for you. We met another Aiel. Rand listened in growing amazement to their tale of the meeting in Kinslayer's dagger. Matt told most of it, with Perrin putting in a correcting word now and again when he embellished too much. Matt made a great show of how dangerous the Aielmen had been, and how close the meeting had come to a fight. And since you're the only Aiel we know, he finished, well, it could be you. Ingtar says Aiel never live outside the waste, so you must be the only one. I don't think that's funny, Matt, Rand growled. I am not an Aiel. The Merrilin said you are. Ingtar thinks you are, Tam said. Shh, shh, shh. He was sick, fevered. They had severed the roots he had thought he had, the Aes Sedai and Tam between them, though Tam had been too sick to know what he was saying. They had cut him loose to tumble before the wind, then offered him something new to hold on to. False dragon, Aiel. He could not claim those for roots. He would not. Maybe I don't belong to anyone, but the 2 Rivers is the only home I know. I didn't mean anything, Matt protested. It's just... Burn me. Ingtar says you are. Masema says you are. Urien could have been your cousin. And if Ryan put on a dress and said she was your aunt, you'd believe it yourself. Oh, all right. Don't look at me like that, Perrin. If he wants to say he isn't, all right. What difference does it make anyway? Perrin shook his head. Ogier girls brought water and towels for washing faces and hands, and cheese and fruit and wine, with pewter goblets a little too large to be comfortable in the hand. Other Ogier women came too, their dresses all embroidered. One by one they appeared, a dozen of them all told, to ask if the humans were comfortable, if they needed anything. Each turned her attentions to Loial just before she left. He gave his answers respectfully, but in as few words as Rand had ever heard him use, standing with an Ogier-sized wood-bound book clutched to his chest like a shield, and when they went, he huddled in his chair with the book held up in front of his face. Books in the house were one thing, not sized for humans. "Just smell this air, Lord Rand," Urien said, filling his lungs with a smile. His feet dangled from one of the chairs at the table. He swung them like a boy. "I never thought most places smelled bad, but this, Lord Rand, I don't think there's ever been any killing here. Not even any hurting, except by accident." "The Stedding are supposed to be safe for everyone," Rand said. He was watching Loial. That's what the stories say anyway. He swallowed a last bit of white cheese and went over to the Ogier. Matt followed with a goblet in his hand. "What's the matter, Loial?" Rand said. "You've been as nervous as a cat in a dog yard ever since we came here." "It is nothing," Loial said, giving the door an uneasy glance from the corner of his eye. "Are you afraid they'll find out you left Stedding Shanghai without permission from your elders?" Loial looked around wildly, the tufts on his ears vibrating. "Don't say that," he hissed. He hissed, "Not where anyone can hear." "If they found out." With a heavy sigh, he slumped back, looking from Rand to Matt to Matt. "I don't know how humans do it, but among Ogier, if a girl sees a boy she likes, she goes to her mother. Or sometimes the mother sees someone she thinks is suitable. In any case, if they agree, the girl's mother goes to the boy's mother, and the next thing the boy knows, his marriage is all arranged." "Doesn't the boy have any say in it?" Matt asked incredulously. "None. The women always say we would spend our lives married to the trees if it was left to us." Loial shifted, grimacing. "Half of our marriages take place between Stedding. Groups of young Ogier visit from Stedding to Stedding so they can see and be seen. If they discover I'm outside without permission, the elders will almost certainly decide I need a wife to settle me down. Before I know it, they'll have sent a message to Stedding Shanghai, to my mother, and she will come here and have me married before she washes off the dust of her journey. She's always said I am too hasty and need a wife. I think she was looking when I left. Whatever wife she chooses for me. Well, any wife at all won't let me go back outside until I have gray in my beard. Wives always say no man should be allowed outside until he's settled enough to control his temper." Matt gave a guffaw loud enough to draw every head, but at Loial's frantic gesture he spoke softly. "Among us, men do the choosing, and no wife can stop a man doing what he wants." Rand frowned, remembering how Egwene had begun following him around when they were both little. It was then that Mistress Alvere had begun taking a special interest in him, more than in any of the other boys. Later, some girls would dance with him on feast days and some would not, and those who would were always Egwene's friends, while those who would not were girls. Egwene did not like. He also seemed to remember Mistress Alvere taking Tam aside, and she was muttering about Tam not having a wife for her to talk to, and after that, Tam and everyone else had acted as if he and Egwene were promised, even though they had not knelt before the women's circle to say the words. He had never thought about it this way before. Things between Egwene and him had always just seemed to be the way they were. And that was that. "I think we do it the same way," he muttered, and when Matt laughed, he added, "Do you remember your father ever doing anything your mother really didn't want him to?" Matt opened his mouth with a grin, then frowned thoughtfully and closed it again. Juin came down the steps from outside. "If you please, will all of you come with me? The elders would see you." He did not look at Loial, but Loial still almost dropped the book. "If the elders try to make you stay," Rand said, "we'll say we need you to go with us." "I'll bet it isn't about you at all," Matt said. "I'll bet they're just going to say we can use the Waygate." He shook himself, and his voice fell even lower. "We really have to do it, don't we?" It was not a question. Stay and get married, or travel the ways. Loial grimaced ruefully. Life is very unsettling with Ta'veren for friends. Among the elders. As Juin took them through the Ogier town, Rand saw that Loial was growing more and more anxious. Loial's ears were as stiff as his back. His eyes grew bigger every time he saw another Ogier looking at him, especially the women and girls, and a large number of them did seem to take notice of him. He looked as if he expected his own execution. The bearded Ogier gestured to wide steps leading down into a grassy mound that was bigger by far than any other. It was a hill, for all practical purposes, almost at the base of one of the great trees. "Why don't you wait out here, Loial?" Rand said. "The elders," Juin began, "probably just want to see the rest of us." Rand finished for him. "Why don't they leave him alone?" Matt put in. Loial nodded vigorously. Yes, I think. Shh. His ears jerked, but he looked at the broad door to which the stone steps led down and nodded again. "Yes, I will sit out here and I'll read. That is it. I will read." Fumbling in his coat pocket, he produced a book. He settled himself on the mound beside the steps, the book small in his hands, and fixed his eyes on the pages. "I will just sit here and read until you come out." His ears twitched as if he could feel the women's eyes. Juin shook his head, then shrugged and motioned to the steps again. "If you please, the elders are waiting." The huge windowless room inside the mound was scaled for Ogier, with a thick beam ceiling more than 4 spans up. It could have fit in any palace, for size at least. The 7 Ogiers seated on the dais directly in front of the door made it shrink a little by their size, but Rand still felt as if he were in a cavern. The somber floor stones were smooth, if large and irregular in shape, but the gray walls could have been the rough side of a cliff. The ceiling beams, rough-hewn as they were, looked like great roots, except for a high-backed chair where Vereen sat facing the dais. The only furnishings were the heavy, vine-carved chairs of the elders. The Ogier woman in the middle of the dais sat in a chair raised a little higher than those of the others. 3 bearded men to her left in long, flaring coats. 3 women to her right in dresses like her own, embroidered in vines and flowers from neckline to hem. All had aged faces and pure white hair, even to the tufts on their ears, and an air of massive dignity. Kieran gaped at them openly, and Rand felt like staring himself. Not even Varen had the appearance of wisdom that was in the elders' huge eyes, nor Morgase her crown their authority, nor Moraine their calm serenity. Ingtar was the first to bow, as formally as Rand had ever seen from him, while the others still stood rooted. "I am Allah," the Ogier woman on the highest chair said when they had finally taken their places beside Varen, "eldest of the elders of Stedding Tsofu." Varen has told us that you have need to use the Waygate here. To recover the Horn of Valere from Dart Friends is a great need indeed, but we have allowed none to travel the ways in more than 100 years, neither us nor the elders of any other steading. I will find the horn, Ingtar said angrily. I must, if you will not permit us to use the Waygate. He fell silent as Varen looked at him, but the scowl remained on his face. Alar smiled. Be not so hasty, Shin. You humans never take time for thought. Only decisions reached in calm can be sure. Her smile faded to seriousness, but her voice kept its own measured calm. The dangers of the ways are not to be faced with a sword in your hand, not charging Aiel or ravening Trollocs. I must tell you that to enter the ways is to risk not only death and madness, but perhaps your very souls. We have seen Machin Shin, Rand said, and Matt and Perrin agreed. They could not manage to sound eager to do it again. I will follow the horn to Sheol Ghul itself, if need be, Ingtar said firmly. Durin only nodded, as if including himself in Ingtar's words. Bring trail, Alar commanded. And Juin, who had remained by the door, bowed and left. It is not enough, she told Varen, to hear what can happen. You must see it, know it in your heart. There was an uncomfortable silence until Juin returned, and it became more uncomfortable still as two Ogier women followed him, guiding a dark-bearded Ogier of middle years, who shambled between them as if he did not quite know how his legs worked. His face sagged, without any expression at all, and his big eyes were vacant and unblinking, not staring, not looking, not even seeming to see. One of the women gently wiped drool from the corner of his mouth. They took his arms to stop him. His foot went forward, hesitated, then fell back with a thump. He seemed as content to stand as to walk, or at least as uncaring. Trail was one of the last among us to go along the ways, Alara said softly. He came out as you see him. Will you touch him, Varen? Varen gave her a long look, then rose and strode to Trail. He did not move as she laid her hands on his wide chest, not even a flicker of an eye to acknowledge her touch. With a sharp hiss, she jerked back, staring up at him, then whirled to face the elders. He is empty. This body lives, but there is nothing inside it. Nothing. Every elder wore a look of unbearable sadness. Nothing. One of the elders to Alar's right said softly. Her eyes seemed to hold all the pain Trail's no longer could. No mind, no soul. Nothing of Trail remains but his body. He was a fine tree singer, one of the men sighed. Alar motioned, and the two women turned Trail to lead him out. They had to move him before he began to walk. We know the risks, Varen said, but whatever the risks, we must follow the Horn of Valere. The eldest nodded. The Horn of Valere. I do not know whether it is worse news that it is in Darkfriend hands or that it has been found at all. She looked down the row of elders. Each nodded in turn, one of the men tugging his beard doubtfully first. Very well. Varen tells me time is urgent. I will show you to the Waygate myself. Rand was feeling half relieved and half afraid when she added, You have with you a young Ogier, Loial, son of Arent, son of Halan, from Stedding Shanghai. He is far from his home. We need him, Rand said quickly. His words slowed under surprised stares from the elders and Varen, but he went on stubbornly. We need him to go with us, and he wants to. Is there some reason he cannot come with us? Ingtar asked. As Matt says, he has held his own. I don't know that we need him, but if he wants to come, why? We do need him, Varen broke in smoothly. Few any longer know the ways, but Loial has studied them. He can decipher the guidings. Alar eyed them each in turn and settled to a study of Rand. She looked as if she knew things. All the elders did, but she most of all. Varen says you are Tavern, she said at last, and I can feel it in you. That I can do so means that you must be very strongly Tavern. Indeed, for such talents ever run weakly in us, if at all. Have you drawn Loial, son of Arant, son of Halan, into Tamarau Ailen, the web the pattern weaves around you? I just want to find the horn and Rand let the rest of it die. Alar had not mentioned Mat's dagger. He did not know whether Varen had told the elders or held it back for some reason. He is my friend, eldest. Your friend, Alar said. He is young by our way of thinking. You are young too, but Tavern, you will look after him, and when the weaving is done, you will see that he comes safely home to Stedding Tsofu. I will, he told her. It had the feeling of a commitment, the swearing of an oath. Then we will go to the Waygate. Outside, Loial scrambled to his feet when they appeared, Alair and Vereen leading. Ingtar sent Hurin off at a run to fetch Uno and the other soldiers. Loial eyed the eldest warily, then fell in with Rand at the rear of the procession. The Ogier women who had been watching him were all gone. Did the elders say anything about me? Did she? He peered at Alar's broad back as she ordered Juin to have their horses brought. She started off with Varen, while Juin was still bowing himself away, bending her head to talk quietly. She told Rand to take care of you, Mat told Loial solemnly as they followed, and see you got home safely as a babe. I don't see why you can't stay here and get married. She said you could come with us. Rand glared at Mat, which made Mat chortle under his breath. It sounded odd, coming from that drawn face. Loial was twirling the stem of a true heart blossom between his fingers. Did you go picking flowers? Rand asked. Aerith gave it to me. Loial watched the yellow petals spin. She really is very pretty, even if Mat does not see it. Does that mean you don't want to go with us after all? Loial gave a start. What? Oh no. I mean, yes, I do want to go. She only gave me a flower, just a flower. He took a book out of his pocket, though, and pressed the blossom under the front cover. As he returned the book, he murmured to himself, barely loud enough for Rand to hear, "She said I was handsome, too." Mat let out a wheeze and doubled over, staggering along, clutching his sides, and Loial's cheeks colored. Well, she said it. I didn't. Perrin rapped Mat smartly on the top of his head with his knuckles. Nobody ever said Mat was handsome. He's just jealous. That's not true, Mat said, straightening abruptly. Marissa Aiel thinks I'm handsome. She told me so more than once. Is Marissa pretty? Loial asked. She has a face like a goat, Perrin said blandly. Mat choked, trying to get his protest out. Rand grinned in spite of himself. Marissa was almost as pretty as Egwene, and this was almost like old times, almost like being back home, bantering back and forth, and nothing more important in the world than a laugh and twitting the other fellow. As they made their way through the town, Ogier greeted the eldest, bowing or curtsying, eyeing the human visitors with interest. Alar's set face kept anyone from stopping to speak, though. The only thing that indicated when they left the town was the absence of the mounds. There were still Ogier about, examining trees or sometimes working with pitch and saw or axe where there were dead limbs or where a tree needed more sunlight. They handled the tasks tenderly. Juin joined them, leading their horses, and Huron came riding with Uno and the other soldiers and the pack horses just before Alar pointed and said, "It is over there." Rand felt a momentary surprise. The Waygate had to be outside the steading. The ways had been begun with the one power. They could not have been made inside, but there was nothing to indicate they had crossed the boundary. Then he realized there was a difference. The sense of something lost that he had felt since entering the steading was gone. That gave him another sort of chill. Sedding was there again, waiting. Alar led them past a tall oak, and there in a small clearing stood the big slab of the Waygate, the front of it delicately worked in tightly woven vines and leaves from 100 different plants. Around the edge of the clearing, the Ogier had built a low stone coping that seemed as if it had grown there, suggesting a circle of roots. The look of it made Rand uncomfortable. It took him a moment to realize that the roots suggested were those of bramble and briar, burning leaf and itch oak, not the sort of plants into which anyone would want to stumble. The elders stopped short of the coping. The wall is meant to warn away any who comes here. Not that many of us do. I myself will not cross it, but you may. Juin did not go as close as she did. He kept rubbing his hands on the front of his coat and would not look at the Waygate. "Thank you," Varen told her. "The need is great, or I would not have asked it." Rand tensed as the Aes Sedai stepped over the coping and approached the Waygate. Loial took a deep breath and muttered to himself. Uno and the rest of the soldiers shifted in their saddles and loosened swords in their scabbards. There was nothing along the ways against which a sword would be any use, but it was something to convince themselves they were ready. Only Ingtar and the Aes Sedai seemed calm. Even Alar gripped her skirt with both hands. Varen plucked the Avendasora leaf, and Rand leaned forward intently. He knew an urge to assume the void, to be where he could reach Sedding if he needed to. The greenery carved across the Waygate stirred in an unfilled breeze, leaves fluttering as a gap opened down the center of the mass, and the two halves began to swing open. Rand stared at the first crack. There was no dull, silvery reflection behind it, only blackness, blacker than pitch. "Close it," he shouted. "The black wind. Close it." Vareen took one startled look and thrust the three-pointed leaf back in among all the varied leaves already there. It stayed when she took her hand away and backed toward the coping. As soon as the Avendasora leaf was back in its place, the Waygate immediately began to close. The crack disappeared, vines and leaves merging, hiding the blackness of Machin Shin, and the Waygate was only stone again, if stone carved in a nearer semblance of life than seemed possible. Alar let out a shuddering breath. Machin Shin. So close. "It didn't try to come out," Rand said. Juin made a strangled sound. "It cannot leave them." She sounded calm, but she still wiped her hands on her skirt. Rand opened his mouth, then gave it up. "And yet," she went on, "I wonder at it being here. First in Cairhien, now here. I wonder." She gave Rand a sidelong glance that made him jump. The look was so quick that he did not think anyone else noticed it, but to Rand it seemed to connect him with the black wind. I have never heard of this, Alar said slowly. Machin, Shin waiting when a Waygate was opened. It always roamed the ways, but it has been long, and perhaps the Black Wind hungers and hopes to catch some unwary one entering a gate. Varen, assuredly you cannot use this Waygate, and however great your need, I cannot say I am sorry. The ways belong to the shadow now. Rand frowned at the Waygate. Could it be following me? There were too many questions. Had Fain somehow ordered the Black Wind? Varen said it could not be done. And why would Fain demand that he follow, then try to stop him? He only knew that he believed the message. He had to go to Toman Head. If they found the Horn of Valere and Mat's dagger under a bush tomorrow, he still had to go. Varen stood with eyes unfocused in thought. Mat was sitting on the coping with his head in his hands, and Perrin watched him worriedly. Loial seemed relieved that they could not use the Waygate, and ashamed at being relieved. We are done for here, Ingtar announced. Perrin said I followed you here against my better judgment, but I can no longer follow. I mean to return to Cairhien. Barthanes can tell me where the Dark Friends went, and somehow I will make him do it. Fain went to Toman Head, Rand said wearily, and where he went, that's where the horn is, and the dagger. I suppose. Perrin shrugged reluctantly. I suppose we could try another Waygate. At another stedding? Loial stroked his chin and spoke quickly, as if to make up for his relief at the failure here. Stedding Cantuan lies just above the river Irilel, and Stedding Taijing is east of it in the spine of the world. But the Waygate in Cairhien, where the grove was, is closer, and the gate in the grove at Tar Valon is closest of all. Whichever Waygate we try to use, Vereen said absently, I fear we will find Machin Shin waiting. She muttered to herself instead, shaking her head as if arguing with herself. What we need, Huron said diffidently, is one of those portal stones. He looked to Alar, then Varen, and when neither told him to stop, he went on, sounding increasingly confident. The Lady Selene said those old Aes Sedai had studied those worlds, and that was how they knew how to make the ways, and that place we were. Well, it only took us 2 days, Les, to travel 100 leagues. If we could use a portal stone to go to that world, or one like it, why, it'd take no more than a week or 2 to reach the Aryth Ocean, and we could come back right on Toman Head. Maybe it isn't so quick as the ways, but it's a long sight quicker than riding off west. What do you say, Lord Ingtar? Lord Rand? Varen answered him. What you suggest might be possible, Sniffer, but as well hope to open this Waygate again and find Machin Shin gone as hope to find a portal stone. I know none closer than the Aiel Waste, though we could go back in the Kinslayer's dagger, if you, or Rand, or Loial think you could find that stone again. Rand looked at Mat. His friend had lifted his head hopefully at this talk of the stones. A few weeks, Varen had said. If they simply rode west, Mat would never live to see Toman Head. I can find it, Rand said reluctantly. He felt ashamed. Mat's going to die. Dart friends have the Horn of Valere. Fain will hurt Iman's field if you don't follow him, and you're afraid to channel the power. Once to go and once to come back. Twice more won't drive you mad. What really made him afraid, though, was the eagerness that leaped inside him at the thought of channeling again, of feeling the power fill him, of feeling truly alive. I do not understand this, Alar said slowly. The portal stones have not been used since the Age of Legends. I did not think there was anyone who still knew how to use them. The brown Aja knows many things, Varen said dryly, and I know how the stones may be used. The eldest nodded. Truly there are wonders in the White Tower of which we do not dream. But if you can use a portal stone, there is no need for you to ride to Kinslayer's dagger. There is a stone not far from where we stand. The wheel weaves as the wheel weaves, and the pattern provides what is needful. The absent look dropped from Varen's face altogether. Take us to it, she said briskly. We have lost more than enough time already.